Live from the UK, broadcasting around the world, you're listening to Talking Minaret, discussing matters that affect you, streaming to the world and beyond.
Assalamualaikum. Welcome to another episode of Talking Minaret. Got a few guests with us. Sam from Deen Machine. I've got the two Abdullas as well.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
I'm going to be having a roundtable discussion. So the topic is Dunya better than Deen. I'm going to pose a few questions and I just want to get your thoughts on them. The questions are, how was it like growing up as a Muslim in your household and outside the household? Point number 2, is there no thought being put into today's Islam? Question mark. And point number 3, do you really put Islam above the dunya? Question mark. So we'll start off with the first one. How was it like growing up as a Muslim in your household and outside the household?
Well, I live kind of near the south of England, so kind of near London. And where I'm from is a predominantly white area. And where I'm from, the people here are like really welcoming and very, they promote diversity. And personally, I haven't really, experienced any sort of kind of racism or anything. So practicing my religion and just, doesn't really raise any eyebrows with any of the non-believers. And especially because nowadays, schools, colleges, unis, workplaces and stuff all take issues regarding discrimination very seriously. So outside of the household, alhamdulillah, everything's fine. And within my household, both my parents, alhamdulillah, are quite religious, and they make it so that we do all the fard stuff. We pray, we fast, we do everything, and we kind of have an Islamic mindset with pretty much everything that we try and do. So the influence from inside the house is also very good, alhamdulillah.
Yeah, I mean, my experience with non-Muslims is the majority of them, they don't question. You know how us Muslims, obviously, we don't see this life as a permanent thing. It's a temporary thing. It's a test. And our eventual goal is Jannah, inshallah, yeah? So our hereafter is the main thing. For them, it's YOLO. It's you only live once. That's the number one thing. So they don't really care about why they're here, what their purpose is. They just want to have a good time. They just want to enjoy the luxuries of the world. That's the mindset of the standard non-believer. Obviously, there are exceptions, but generally, that's the way they live. Are addicted to the way their lifestyle is. They don't want to change, or they don't care, or they're just satisfied with just floating through life.
Okay, I propose a question to everyone here. Let's say, obviously, everyone's scenario is always going to be different. How they've been brought up and how they lived within the home and outside the home, and how they've grown up. It's always going to be different from everyone's perspective. Let's say for the brother, obviously you are you like the only Muslim family with, or you've got more Muslims?
No. There's a lot of Muslims, but
okay, so
I think the views that I hold isn't the views that others hold. Like even my parents think like I agree with them as well. Obviously, non-believers have their destination, and inshallah, Muslims are gonna have their own destination. So, inshallah, every Muslim goes to heaven. But I do also agree with the fact that non-believers, people who have the facilities to find out information, then that's their trial. They're supposed to try and find out the information. That's their fault if they don't find it.
Yeah.
For me, growing up, it was mainly about the namaz back in the day. Very individualistic, if you know what I mean. Alhamdulillah, people now, they're talking about the status of the Muslims around the world, in China, whatever it might be, with the Uyghur situation. But it's now more about, the education, getting the degree, getting the job, becoming a doctor. I don't blame them, to be fair. Of course, it's important to excel in these parts of your life, but it doesn't mean that you prioritize those things over your deen. Remember, it's your deen that will help you achieve these things in the dunya and the akhirah. I think there's a separation that happens. We don't believe as Muslims in a secular religion that makes you sit on top of a tree with a nappy, meditating, or just doing the spiritual ibadah. I mean, providing for your family is ibadah, right? At the end of the day, who is the one who's going to provide you that risk, your progression, your prosperity in your life? No matter how much you try, none of it can be achieved unless it's with Allah's will. Which is why it's so important to put the Creator, before any of the creations. Like, the Creator is always at the top. So yeah, I mean, like, for me growing up, it was mainly that very secular understanding, and we've kind of discussed in previous podcasts about like liberalism, secularism, and things like that. It's very, I mean, like, parents' main goal is to make the kids integrated, but not in purpose, but seeing the environment when they first came to this country. I mean, like, they just wanted the success of their children, right? It wasn't for some kind of bad reason. But then again, that's led to parents being more interested in getting the best education for their kids rather than work towards the dawah.
I was gonna say, like you said, in terms of how our parents came to the country. Like, if you see it like this, right? Our parents come to the country from a country where they've barely got anything, so they've come here to make a new life, to make money, and to obviously thrive in their country. Obviously, they don't want the hardship that they're going through for it to be upon us when we're older. So they'll make money for us and obviously pass it on or whatever. Obviously, make sure that we make decisions in terms of, let's say, our education, that we get good education to get a good job. That was the mentality that they would set. Obviously, I wouldn't say that it was purely just on the fact that, okay, we need to have this mentality that our kids are education based. I mean, there was still that responsibility of a parent, especially from my mum and dad, is the fact that I'm living in my kid is growing up in a foreign country for them, and there's a risk of he could turn out to be like them, a person who doesn't believe in Allah, a person who doesn't believe in the messenger, a person who's not a Muslim. So they had the responsibility to make sure, okay, how do I make sure that my son or daughter doesn't grow up like that? So obviously, for me, how I grew up is once I hit, obviously, when you're younger, you learn Qaeda, you learn the Quran, you learn the basics from your parents. But then I got pushed on to go into madrasa as well. So after school, I go into madrasa. So even out there, be like what, 2.5 hours, reading Quran, reading stories of the Prophet ﷺ, reading akhlaq, akida, little books and stuff like that. It's not a very major thing, but it's like little things. And for me personally, for how I, as a person, being closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and obviously the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, being closer being better Muslim, was me like learning from these different books and these people, the teachers which I had, which were alims and hafizes and whatnot. They taught me how a Muslim should be, right? But I feel like not every child had that experience as I've had. Like, again, like yourselves, I can't really speak on your behalves, but did any of you guys go madrasa, or were you taught from your parents to become how you are now, or would you say that you've taught yourself as you've grown older as well?
I think my dad's, he tries to make us try and do all of our prayers together in congregation. We do a lot of things within the guidance of Islam when we do it at home, especially. So he teaches us a lot about Islam here, and he also teaches us about the importance of doing well in like school, college, and uni. But I know there's a lot of parents who stress their kids' education more than religion, more than anything else, because it might have something to do with the fact that they came from a foreign land. So coming here, they want their kids to have what they didn't. That's why they're stressing more that than religion.
I think, to be honest with you, I think alhamdulillah, well, my parents are quite religious as well. So in a way, alhamdulillah, I've been blessed to be brought up in a way that, to be brought up with Islamic values. So I've grown up in a way that they've taught me the importance of religion and the importance of practicing religion. But I know, personally, I know people as well that, you know, have parents that aren't maybe as religious, and they've obviously grown up to reflect that as well. So because of the parents not being quite as religious as maybe alhamdulillah mine, they're not as religious growing up as a person as well. So I have seen both sides of the coin. People growing up, you know, in this country full of majority non-Muslims, but still practicing. But I've also seen people that maybe are not so practicing as well. With our parents, obviously they came into this country, like you said, with nothing, and their main priority was putting food on the table, making sure that they could feed their families. And like you said, like they didn't want us to face the same struggles. So I feel like a lot of the energy raising our generation was focused on education, so that we wouldn't have to go through all these struggles like they did. Now, my parents, they stress education a lot, but they also raised me with Islam as well. So alhamdulillah, I got both sides, which I think is the best way to raise your kids.
But I think on the back end of what you just saying just now, I think that's an amazing point, because I was going to say that because there's obviously a generational difference between myself and you guys.
Yeah.
But I think that what you just hit on there, you know, the bit that you said about that when they first came over here, they were economic migrants. That's the truth.
Yeah.
The long-term plan wasn't to stay here. Let's be honest. Like, we've all got family members sending money back to build houses over there. I'm sure you know people who are doing that. They're sending back home to build big houses, so then you and your generations after can go back home. So I think that's mainly because the goal here was purely financial. As a Muslim in an un-Islamic environment, and if we look at like apostasy rates, you know, people leaving Islam, and even the closet apostates, those who hide it as well. Reality is that, you know, we're kind of like fish out of water. Hence, you know, like the way to resume the Islamic way of life in the Muslim lands, to establish that unity and to have the Muslims having a state for their own is all the more important, because I do believe that we're like kind of like fish out of water here, and like we'll never be accepted here as one of them. But at the same time, do Muslims here actually want to be accepted as one of them? I'm not sure about that.
I mean, I think because obviously I feel like all of us here are quite similar age group, right? So you know how, let's just put ourselves into the situation, right? How we've grown up and our situation and the people we've become, right? Do you reckon it's the same for the newer generation, the children who are younger than us, or the generation which are younger than us? So obviously, like let's say our little brothers, our little brother's friends, or little, you know, even if it's not little, but little sister, whatever. How do you think their perspective is on life, and how have our parents made a massive, not massive, but have they put the same effort as they did to us to them as well?
I think, to be honest with you, what I've seen, I think it's less effort, because, for example, if you have in a family, you have younger siblings, I think as a kid, you, for example, say I'm a 5-year-old kid, I think you're more likely to follow your older siblings than listen to what your parents say. Like, for example, if you see your older brother playing PlayStation and your parents tell you don't play PlayStation, it's more likely that the kid will play PlayStation because that's what they see their older brother doing. So I think less influence comes from the parents, and more, it's more like evenly distributed between the older siblings and the parents. So I think naturally less effort comes from the parents because they expect the older siblings to lead by example. But having said that, I think as time goes on, it will become like, for example, our kids in the future, or even our younger siblings, it will be more difficult for them to blend in with society and to practice Islam more openly, because I think Islamophobia is just on the rise, isn't it? I mean,
Exactly.
yeah, it is dependent on obviously which area you're from, who you're around. Like I'm pretty sure schools in Small Heath won't have a problem because the whole school is basically Asian, right? But I think obviously if you're in a mixed school or a predominantly white school, you'll get people with not the right education, the wrong image of Islam, and if they see like your future daughter wearing a hijab, they might treat her differently. And that will happen more and more with time because Islamophobia is just on the rise.
Yeah, definitely. We totally agree with that. I mean, if you like you said, the importance of obviously teaching the younger generation, it does slide towards the siblings. I do agree with that. But I also want to just clarify on the fact that in terms of, I think with the younger generation as well, I feel like the importance of the deen. I wouldn't say that, our parents neglect it. I wouldn't say they don't teach it upon us, but in terms of the effort, in terms of we'll be taught that like we said earlier, it's just read our namaz, make sure we're fasting, or as soon as we get to the age, make sure we're fasting, and make sure go to Jummah, eat salah, stuff like that. Obviously the normal stuff of manners, make sure as a Muslim we have to go show good manners. But in terms of would you say the effort is still the same in terms of how much we put into education? So as a kid, as we're learning, am I being pushed more effort into make sure I get good grades, make sure I get a good job, and make sure that, do you get what I'm trying to say in terms of, is that the same effort into Islam as well? Why am I learning Islam? Am I getting taught why am I getting closer to Allah? Why, do you get what I'm trying to say?
So are you asking us to weigh up whether they put more effort into education or more effort into Islam? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, but also I don't want to make it focused on just parents. I'm just saying in a general basis, just between ourselves. How do you think you felt in that scenario? What was the importance and stuff?
Looking at a lot of the people now, if you look at our generation and the older generation, I feel like even the foreign stuff, there's a lot of Muslims that I know who are my age, a lot of my friends, I know a lot of people who don't even do the fard stuff. They don't pray, they don't fast sometimes. There's a lot of Muslims who are doing that, but whereas if you look at the older generation, the likelihood of that happening I think is a lot lower. I think if praying salah and everything, I think younger generation, I think there's a high percentage not reading than the older generation not reading, if that makes sense.
I think inshallah, I think that will change along the line, but because at the end of the day, I mean, all the brothers discussing right now, we talked about parents and what they did when they came over to this country, but the way I see it, I mean, we can't really blame them, really, can we? It's come on, they've come over here, and it's their survival instincts kicking in. All they can think about is saving their kids from drugs, gangs on the streets, the debauchery that's happening in the streets as well, or wherever all the other kids are doing. You can blame them, really. It's just a survival instinct kicking in, and they're in a foreign land as well. What do you expect that's going to happen? So they're going to look at purely the spiritual angle, but at the same time, I think this is where the next generation, answering your question, this is where the next generation will probably, inshallah, do better, because right now we're seeing things almost through a lens of secularism. So they only see their career and their education through the lens of secularism. And it's not like those same kids are being counter-indoctrinated at home, like what they've been indoctrinated in school. Okay, simple example. I know for a fact that I've been taught up until degree level that Darwinian evolution is fact, as in that, and if you argue against it, you're just stupid, apparently. But anyways, it's a different topic. But you hear stories about Andalusia, when the Muslims ruled Spain and all that. People had a goal with their education and their career to further the state, to further the Khilafah, to spread the deen, to spread the justice of Allah, and the system He revealed through the implementation of Islam. And those individuals who worked for it, I mean, like, how old were they? Like Tariq bin Ziyad, he was in his
17.
teens. How old were the
17.
Sahaba? The Sahaba were, majority of them were in their teens. They're literally not even 20 years old.
Yeah.
But like, it's I think going back to your question, I'd say that Alhamdulillah, I think we're at a point where the next generations will shift out of this secular understanding of career and secular understanding of, money making.
I don't know, man. I mean, as much as I want to agree with you, I don't feel like you will. I don't agree.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
What are you saying there?
I think I feel like if I think about it, like exactly the brother said, I would love to agree with you, but inside I actually don't feel like we're heading that way. Like if you look, like obviously there are groups of a small, not even small, but like let's say there's a small percentage of people that are on the path of the deen. But if you look at the majority of the Muslim youth nowadays, would you say they're like they're becoming more religious or becoming less religious? What would you say?
Well, I agree with that, but I think there is an argument for the people of this age. Now it's a lot easier to do more wrong than how it used to be.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like the level of how do I describe it?
But I would say the counter to that I would say is the fact that, I mean, like you just said, the fact that there's a high percentage of the elder generation praying their salah than there are the younger generation, right? But isn't that the case usually anyway? Because as you grow older, you're getting closer to death, so therefore people get religious, right? That's the usual case. People do more when
there's
they
two. Yeah. I mean, there's two sides to this, right? There's like one hand of the youth, right, who pursue Islam, right? Like I can name. Well, no, I don't want to name, but then I can probably separate my friends into two categories. There's a group of friends who are proper dedicated into learning the deen, and they'll literally go out their way to like go to talks, events. They'll sit with the mosque, with the imams and stuff like that, with the alims and stuff like that. They'll learn as much as they can. There's another group of friends who will be like, okay, Islam is just basically my salah, and that's about it, and my life is separate. It comes up to that secular type of belief where religion is one side and, living life, work and stuff like that is another side. You get it? So I agree with yourself in terms of there might be, because obviously we might come to realization that as we're growing older, like you said, that we're praying, we're getting closer to death. I don't want my kids to be like how I used to be when I was younger, in terms of I'm not focused on Islam, I was focused on career. I want Islam to be in their life. But there's also the fact that life of living where I'm in a secular living state where I'm separating Islam and my life. So now I'm going to think in a way like, okay, I've worked hard to get my money, and my kids need to learn that type of discipline as well, that they need to work. They won't get far without working hard. They need to be working hard to make their money. And also with Islam as well, is that going to be like a main focus in terms of teaching them, okay, what I wouldn't say there's more to, I should say there's more to Islam than just praying, but am I just going to be like, just pray and that's enough, but also live your life? Do you get what I'm trying to say? Like that, there's like a two-way street for this generation. I believe there's a two-way street for this generation, that they take the path of it being separate, Islam and living life, and there's another path where they will realize their mistakes and they'll try to mold the next generation to be better Muslims.
Yeah, I completely agree, but I feel like the road, the second road you're talking about, the people that take the road that try and mold the next generation, that's fewer in our generation than it is in the older generation. Because even like you say that, obviously, naturally, when you get older, you become more wise. Maybe you get more scared about death. You start practicing more. Yeah, I do agree with that. on a general as a general rule. But I feel like if you like examine the youth of our parents and their generation and the youth of our generation, we generally speaking, we do a lot more wrong than they used to do. So generation by generation, it is progressively getting worse. And I think everyone would agree to that, no?
Is there a counter to that in the fact that it depends on what clique you're a part of, what grouping? Like, I mean, like, what I mean by that is the fact that I mean, like, I watch a lot of YouTube videos on like the Islamic discussions, debates. Before this whole COVID scenario, like I used to go to talks left, right, center, and I just see a lot more the level of intellectual discussion. Like people are instead like before, people used to debate on the madhab, the salah, and how you perform it, but now the talks are more on like more foundational issues, more complex issues like usul al-fiqh, things like that, and it just seems like people are more intellectually revitalized in terms of their deen, and they want to learn more. I mean, like, and I hate to be taking this conversation elsewhere because we're looking at it from our lives' perspectives and the youth here, but on a macro level, on a macro global level, a political party will have a hard time succeeding if it doesn't have some kind of Islamic slogan, i.e., I don't know, on a macro level, AKP in Turkey, they have to have an Islamic slogan to succeed. Muslim Brotherhood, initially when the Arab Spring thing happened, they had to have an Islamic slogan to succeed. Even Saddam Hussein back in the day, he put Allahu Akbar on his flag because he needed an Islamic slogan to succeed. So, I mean, like, on a macro level, global level, I think I mean, like, right now, what happened with Erdogan and what he did with
but even then I'd argue with that. But isn't that just playing with the masses' emotions rather than the intellectuals, the thought itself? Because let's be honest, if I'm running for something, I will try to play on your strings.
Yeah.
And I will say I'm going to do this. Like Muhammad Mursi, what did he do when he said Sharia, and after Sharia, then only Sharia? That's what he said. That's what he would literally screaming that. I will implement the whole of Quran. But then when he did come into power, what did he do? The complete U-turn to what he was saying.
But then with Mohamed Morsi, what you're saying about Mohamed Morsi in Egypt, the whole plan, the Arab Spring, was a false operation designed by America in the first place. So, if the Muslim Brotherhood, I know we're taking this discussion totally elsewhere right now, but if Muslim Brotherhood were more politically aware, they would have understood that was an American project, but obviously there wasn't. But the point that I was trying to say is the fact that, largely speaking, throughout the world, if you want success as a political organization or just a grouping outright anywhere, for Muslims, you need to have an Islamic slogan. You will never succeed if you don't. You'll have a hard time succeeding if you don't have an Islamic slogan. And I think, broadly speaking, that's true.
Yeah.
But back to the micro level that we're discussing here about the youth right now, say in the UK.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of back and forth, and there's different points of view, and it's all down to I don't know, geographical reasons maybe, and also the age categories are different within this discussion as well between us all. But I think, would you guys say the fact that Muslims are turning to Islam less or more?
Yeah, you would. Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna counter what you're less, right? Okay. See us like this now. We're a generation who's been slapped into the middle of a massive attack on Islam. See us like that, yeah? Islam is broadcasted all over the world, on news, on media, everything, yeah? The reason Islam is been growing so much is because it's been plastered everywhere and people are looking into it a lot more. Okay, as a person, as an individual, would you not question, as a Muslim in this generation, would you not question, why is my religion constantly on the media? Why is it always getting blasted for?
Yeah, I see what you mean. But at the same time, if um the if Islam is being portrayed all over the world as such a bad thing, for example, if someone said, like you said, it should make someone learn more about the religion, come closer to the religion. But for example, as an individual, if you come closer to the religion and you yourself think, okay, no, what the world is saying is wrong. Islam isn't like this. It's like this. It's a religion of peace. It's a beautiful religion, etc., etc. That person who's already Muslim, what as an individual, what influence can they have on the greater population of Muslims who don't sort of put in the effort to explore their religion in more detail? What there will be a few that sort of this whole like Islamophobia makes them closer to Islam, but I feel like it's outnumbered by the amount of people that aren't bothered as much.
So wouldn't that questioning also make you want to come closer to the deen as well and learn about it?
Yeah.
That's an interesting point.
I mean, okay, just to clarify on your point as well, and going back to the question, the fact that how is it like growing up and how is it like within the home and outside the home? For me, right, as a person, for me, I've grown up in a white area, and me growing up, I've been around a lot of racist abuse. I'll be honest with you. I remember when I had to come home from not primary school, high school, get into the thobe and leave the house to go madrasa. I used to get, all the comments looked up and down, everything, like the whole shebang. And I feel like how he said that, he lived in an environment where they were quite forward thinking and they were quite universal in terms of they didn't really think much or say much towards it. Yeah. If you look at how it was back then for us,
yeah,
that area was before to how it is now, it's a day-night difference, isn't it? To how we were younger to how we are now. In terms of how a Muslim leads his life now, because I feel like there's a lot more Muslim populations in these areas which are mostly white populated. And I feel like also the fact that the younger generation are more open to the religion. And it's also the fact that having a pride within the deen as well, the fact that they are seeing constant attacks and stuff like that. So when someone does attack Islam, that pride will kick in, you get me? But I feel like because back then we were low in numbers, but now we're high in numbers, and I feel like that pride and that the high numbers and having that confidence now, I feel like we've got the confidence now. There's more of a drive of us Muslims become more closer to deen. I mean, like look at you said there's like a less minority of people who make a massive influence. Okay, example would be Smart to Jannah. He's a massive influence. Ali Dawa, he's a massive influence. Ali Banatia, he was a massive influence to a lot of Muslims. Even that show, what's it called now? Ertugrul. That's a massive hit to the Ummah. That's a massive hit. Like legit, if you look at Muslims before Ertugrul and Muslims after Ertugrul, look how many people know about history now. So many people know about history. Like I know brothers, I won't say their names, but they used to be up to all sorts until they watch that show. They got very interested into it. They learned about the history and they learned stuff outside of the Turkish region reign as well. And it just shows how much a small little thing like a small little influence can do a massive impact on the Muslim Ummah. Because at the end of the day, as a Muslim, as the Ummah, we know even if we were small, we know we hold the truth. But once you spark something in the Ummah, it goes overboard. And I feel like to go back to the question in terms of is there less Muslims nowadays? I feel like there's a lot more Muslims and a lot more Muslims going towards that Muslim path of teaching. But I think again, there's still that side of we do believe that education comes before Islam, and I feel like even though we are close to the Deen, a lot closer to the Deen, we're still away from living an Islamic way of life.
You mean a non-secular version of Islam?
Yeah, that's it. But I don't think we're far from getting have a living by Islamic as like
on a journey towards that.
Yeah.
I think also is the fact that I'm from an older generation from you guys, so
Yeah.
I can compare it throughout throughout the years, throughout the decades. So the way I see it, I mean, like, there's more people. The question is there more people talking about Islam? Yes. Is there more people talking about the Islamic systems, and how Islam's a complete way of life? Does anybody reject that Islam's a complete way of life that encompasses everything, not just your spirituality? I mean, like, nobody rejects that. Is there Muslims talking about their history, whether that be the Abbasids, the Umayyads, the Ottoman history, the Ertugrul, whatever you want to call it, the Seljuks and all that? Like, people are more aware of this than they were, say, 10 years ago or even 20 years ago. I promise you, they're more aware of this now. I've been to even talks within masjids where people are talking about this openly, about unity, Khilafah, openly in masjids. And like, I remember when I was younger, about 20 years ago, and I would never see anything like that in a masjid. It's like night and day difference. Is there a long way to go? I would say, I would 100% yes. What the brother mentioned before, can dunya distract the youth? Because it's the youth that are going to change the ummah. It's not the elder generation. It's not your nana or your dada or whoever it is. They've done what they could, and now the baton has been passed on. So, is there more distractions nowadays? I mean, like social media, like
100%.
people have been given. Actually, that leads on perfectly into our next question. Is there no thought being put into today's Islam? Yeah. I mean, like, the youth are chasing the dream, yeah? The true meaning of tranquility compared to the pipe dream people have nowadays. They have I don't know what kind of grasp on tranquility that they have nowadays. I'd say it's like what's happening now is like a temporary contamination of the ummah. Like, the flaws of what you see in social media, what area people should be living in, what car they should be driving, what kind of house, or what kind of what kids should have. Your kids should have a certain degree or a certain school that they need to go to. They have these kind of things being pushed into them via social media. But then again, I'd say the fact that those kind of ideas, it doesn't take much to it doesn't take much to chink that armor, exposing like the flaws of the dunya and exposing everything that people are chasing now. It doesn't take much to show the flaws of it. I mean, look at suicide rates with celebrities. They've got it all right, but then they end up committing suicide. So, I mean, like, what your thoughts on is there no thought being put into today's Islam?
So I saw this quote that Mufti Meng said, and he said that you cannot raise your kids the way your parents have raised you, because your parents raised you for a world that no longer exists today. And I think that quotation perfectly sums up how our parents raised us is always going to be different to how we raise our like sort of younger siblings or the future youth, because like you said, times are changing, things aren't like how probably even when when you guys were young, like it's probably different to when I was young, even though there's only a few years gap. So constantly things are changing. You have to adapt to the situation and bring up your kids in a way that they will understand the values of Islam without feeling like an alien to the rest of the world. So I feel like obviously now you have technology. When our parents grew up, they didn't have technology. So you can't expect us to be raised in the same way that our parents were raised. There will always be differences. So we sort of make sure that even though there are differences, the main fundamental Islamic values stay the same.
I was going to just add on to that point. Okay, would you say, right, you know how you've said that today's day and age is different, right? I totally agree with that. Like, you wouldn't do the same as you did from your previous generation.
No.
But you would still obviously importance of Islam being
Yeah.
taught to your child.
Exactly. Yeah.
It will still be the same as before, but how you do it will be different. But would you say, okay, you as an individual, okay, what did you study? Have you graduated?
Yeah, I've graduated. Yeah, I've just
Graduated.
I studied optometry at university, so I'm just in my pre-registration year.
Okay, so let's say this, right? As you as an individual, not even you as in general, right? You as a uni student, general uni student, not you specific, but general uni student.
Yeah.
You learning your subject, right? And you putting the passion and the drive behind the subject, right? What's it for? Why do you do that for?
To become an expert in the subject, get a good job, make some good money.
Yeah, I mean, completely agree. That would be the best answer. Would you say that that's the same effort as a person is put into Islam as well?
I wouldn't say so, no.
And do you not agree with the fact that we should be like, that thought to the question about is the same thought put into Islam today? Like, are we doing that? Are we actually doing that? Not even for our kids. I forget looking to our future, but let's look about the present now for us, because we're not old. We're young. We're still young. Are we doing that same thought process of how we did our education? Why am I doing this for? To get a good job? Why am I doing this for? To be an expert in my subject area? Why am I following Islam? Why am I praying? Why am I even a Muslim? To obviously be this, I am a servant of Allah and I want Jannah. That's my reward at the end of it. I want to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Am I having that same effort towards education, towards my deen?
No, I don't think so. It's unbalanced. Like, even if you look quantitatively, yeah, if you count how many hours you spend at uni, in lectures, revising, studying for your exams, and how many hours, if there is hours, devoted to learning about Islam, practicing Islam, I think there's a clear difference in how much time is spent on Islam compared to education. So there's definitely a big difference between them. We do prioritize education more than Islam, and it's quite clear to see. All you have to do is just look at the numbers.
But at the same time, I don't want it to sound like that we're anti-education, anti-career, whatever it is. But like, there's a bit of a caveat in there, yeah.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, like, and also the version. Would you guys say that the version of Islam that we're being taught is I'm going back to the whole secular Islam, because I mean, there's a quote that says it pretty well. Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, he says the fact that do not be fooled by the one who recites the Quran. His recitation is but speech, but look at those who are acting according to it. So because of this new secular Islam that's been propagated, it's led to people to blur the lines as to what's halal or haram. The idea of shares and stocks being involved in pyramid schemes, mortgages. So the thought being, going back to the question, the thought being put into Islam now, is that where it needs to be? I mean, like, do we put more thought into our education? As in, like, if I'm applying via UCAS to one degree, what if I don't get into that university? Have I got a backup? Have I got a backup for that backup? I think you get like 5 choices or like that anyway. But like, how you put a lot of thought into it, your education, your grades.
Yeah.
If I don't get these grades, I'm going to do this course as a backup or whatever it is. But like, is that thought being put into Islam? As in, like, and I had some brothers the other day trying to involve me in some kind of pyramid scheme when I know clearly pyramid schemes are haram, but they see Islam as just purely recitation. That quote from Umar ibn al-Khattab recitation. They see Quran as, you just read the Quran and that's it. You don't have to understand it, the rules and regulations that come from it. And they see Islam as, as long as you pray your 5 times Salah, you're perfectly fine. Yeah. So I mean, like, you know what I mean? Yeah,
I mean, like, a lot of people are like that. They just limit their Islam to, Salah, fasting, charity, etc. But as we all know, Islam is a lifestyle, yeah? So let me give you another example. I know people who wanted to have degrees, but the way they did it, just purely for the fact that they didn't have to do haram by taking out that loan and paying interest. They worked alongside university as a part-time job, and they paid off their own tuition. So that person, I would say to that person is putting Deen before Dunya, because they're saying, if I can, in other words, they're saying, if I can work and pay my own loan off without taking interest, then I will get this degree. If not, then I won't get the degree. Does that make sense? And second of all, another example is like people that take out mortgages constantly. Like, I know people say that properties is a good way to make money now, like, because it's an investment. Your money only grows.
Oh, yeah.
People like they get into property business by taking out mortgages. Obviously, mortgages haram, but that's another example of going after the lifestyle, going after those properties, rather than thinking, okay, look, I'm renting this house, I'm comfortable, alhamdulillah, I'm not doing any haram. But instead, your goal is to take out many mortgages, build up your properties, and then one day live off the rent of those properties.
Yeah, a lot of bad things look attractive to people. Like, if they are making, for example, if you're talking about the mortgage and property buying and stuff, people are seeing the money aspect of things. If they're making a profit from it, they're looking more at the profit than the deen side. A lot of people are. And so ultimately, the person who's taken out that mortgage to buy that property, their intentions are completely wrong. So they're trying to make money while being Muslim, but in a haram way. And if they're making profit from that, other Muslims are learning from them. So they're gonna get punished for if they influence other people for doing it. If that makes sense.
Also, I think what's happened as well is that people are no doubt taking mortgages, riba loans and stuff like that. It's haram, yeah. There's no argument that it's haram, yeah. But like, I think at the same time, people are doing that, but at the same time, they're not warning others to not do it. Meaning that the Ummah, what does Allah say in the Quran about us? Allah says, you're the best nation raised to mankind because you do Amar bil Ma'ruf wa Nahy anil Munkar, you enjoin good and you forbid all evil. So like, this is an important obligation, enjoining good, forbidding evil, as in like we have to do it, as in like to the point actually, Al-Qurtubi, he's I think he was an Andalusian scholar, classical, right? And he said the fact that, I got a quote from a book about enjoining good, forbidding evil, and I think it states something in relation to even the drunkard. The obligation on the drunkard is to warn other drunk people to stop drinking, i.e. enjoining good, forbidding evil. So even if a person, like, it's become the norm, do you guys think so? Like, some people, a person takes out a loan, a mortgage, yeah, and then they encourage other people to take out mortgages, and it's like, no, even if you've taken out a mortgage, you should be telling other people not to take a mortgage. And there's a hadith about this, actually, about the Prophet ﷺ said, was asked, O Messenger of Allah ﷺ, shouldn't we refrain from calling others to goodness if we don't practice all good things ourselves? And shouldn't we refrain from forbidding wrong things until we ourselves have abstained from all the bad? The Prophet ﷺ replied, no. You should call others to goodness even if you don't do all good, and you should forbid bad things even if you don't abstain from all of them yourselves. So it's an obligation for us to enjoin good, forbid evil. And I think that's another thing that's happened with this generation, and also my generation, even the generation above mine. And the fact that, like, the evil of things have become so apparent, and like people are doing them, and people don't want to warn other people not to do them because it's become like a norm when it shouldn't become a norm, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, exactly. It's encouraged now to buy properties when you're young because of the financial advantage you get later on. It's actually encouraged. If you search on, for example, like YouTube, how to make money, I guarantee the first thing will come up, say property investment, property ladder, etc., etc.
Yeah.
And people are just encouraging these things from a financial point of view, completely ignoring what Islam says. So yeah, a lot of people do prioritize dunya over deen.
And going back to the fact that the brother was saying how a lot of people, even including Muslims, think that Islam is reciting verses and doing a prayer and that's it, having no other kind of that being the criteria for being a Muslim. But obviously, we know that the first hadith is in Sahih al-Bukhari is the reward of deeds depends upon the intention. So if someone's intention is to pray and gain knowledge and has the right intentions, that's when they're gonna get the reward for doing these actions. But I feel like a lot of people, if they do things just because they have to, and because they think that it's just reciting verses, then they're gonna get less reward than if their intentions are pure and if they do it with the right intentions.
I think I was just gonna. It's a bit of a bit quite away from what all the brothers are saying, but it's more towards of the thought on this towards Islam. I think it comes down to the individual, whether the thought of Islam will come to their mind if it benefits them or if it doesn't benefit them. So you know how you guys all talk about mortgages. Because let's be honest, we won't talk about Islam when it comes to mortgages. I've had the discussions about mortgages with people in my family, and it will never come towards of like it's Islam based. It all becomes of, well, I need a roof under my head. I need to make sure my kids, and stuff like that. Do you get me? It will based onto that why it benefits them.
Yeah.
Then you talk about like things. Let's talk about
yeah.
I don't know, Islamic politics, right? We would never. Let's be honest, politics to Islam to a lot of people, it's something vulgar. No one wants to talk about it. Remember what happened with Brexit? And they were talking about we should be voting for the Labour Party because the greater of goods or the greater of better evils. I can't remember what the slogan they used.
Lesser of two evils.
Less of two evils. They'll start quoting all sorts of like I don't know, some sort of apparently it's a hadith or some sort of Islamic saying or something like that. And
everybody becomes a scholar.
Yeah, they'll start talking about all this and start talking about politics. And so we should be into our politics, and it'll be they'll start talking about Islam when it's something that is beneficial towards them. Like,
is basically what you're trying to say is the fact that instead of halal and haram being the criteria for action, you're saying that the criteria for action has become benefit and harm. Allah says in the Quran, in Surah Qiyamah, verse 36, do people think that they will be left without purpose? And you know what? And believe you me, if we just focus on ourselves, sooner rather than later, the kuffar will work to change your deen, the Muslims' deen, to secularize it to the point that it's just like a set of rituals like Christianity, because brothers are not at its doors protecting Islam. That's what's happening right now. It reminds me of a quote. Who was it? It was the British Foreign Minister addressing the British Prime Minister shortly before World War II. He said the fact that we must put an end to anything which brings about any kind of Islamic unity between the sons of Muslims. And we have already succeeded in finishing off the Khilafah. So we must ensure that there will never arise again unity of the Muslims. That's what he said. Lord Curzon, the British Foreign Minister in front of the House of Commons, he says that the situation is now that the Turkey is dead. Turkey was the head of the Khilafah back in the day, the Ottomans, and will never arise again because we have destroyed its moral strength, the Khilafah and Islam. And these are like proper top officials saying this, and it goes back to the point that we're discussing is there no thought being put into today's Islam. I think that there needs to be more thought being put in. I think we're in a progressive journey and things are changing, but there's a lot more still that we need to do. I think based on that we should go into a third and final point. Do you really put Islam above the dunya ?
I think this relates to that point we made earlier about in terms of not even just education, in terms of anything we do towards progressing ourselves, the effort we put into it to make sure we get there is not the same effort we put into Islam. I can't remember who it was who said it. I think it was Tony Blair or George Bush.
I heard about that,
just add on the point of how you said that the disbelievers will always attack Islam's idea. He said that they can have their mosque, they can pray in the mosque.
Tony Blair.
Can have Tony Blair, yeah. They can have the mosque, they can stay in the mosque, they can read the Quran, but anything more than that, we will not accept it. Yeah. And what do you think they mean by the more than that? It's that Islamic way of life, living an Islamic way of life. Because that stuff, even though it's such a importance to us as a Muslim, that praying, having a mosque to pray in, and reading the Quran, being able to read the Quran, being accepted by them in that term, that's a big thing. But anything more than that, if I want to live by Islam now, past the mosque and stuff like that, it becomes a threat to them, and that's what they've been working towards the whole life. I mean, if you look at it like this, our previous generation, the elder generation, they might have been physically hurt more, but we're intellectually hurt more. Look how open you're talking about LGBT. Look how open you're talking about how religion is not important anymore. Yeah. It's like a history lesson now in the school academic. Do you get it? Like, the intellectual is being attacked a lot more. We might not be being physically attacked in this country, in this specific country, but our minds are
the whole idea of religion has been thrown out the window. Even when I talk to, like, for example, my work colleagues, the majority of them say, religion really is so outdated. Like, move forward with the times. No one religion just gets in the way of life nowadays. A lot of people think that religion is so historic, outdated, backwards. Not everyone now is literally living like a carefree life. People say, whatever you do, just make sure you're happy. You don't have to explain to anyone else. As long as you feel okay, that's all that matters. That's the mentality of today. No one cares about religion anymore.
You guys see what happened with that? That the new woman head of the MCB, the Muslim Council of Britain, on that radio show. Do you remember? It's happened recently. She was asked about, the whole. There's no female imams, are there? You guys hear about that?
Yeah. The way she was questioning her, she was being really sly with it. But the way she questioned her, and then she's like, but the way you're answering it, I feel like you're not answering the question. Is there female imams? Are there going to be female imams? Yeah. You keep avoiding the question. I was like, yo.
She should have just, and to be fair, I saw other people's responses to it. Like, the whole, some of the brothers in the Dawah field and stuff, they were responding to saying the fact that, fair enough, there's no imam positions for women, but the women can still be scholars and they can still be intellectuals. And like giving you the example of Aisha and her, obviously one of the biggest scholars out there. Obviously, half of our hadith come from through her chain of narrations. Fine, but the role of imam isn't. There isn't any women positions for the role of imam. But I think that she should have just. That woman, when she was on there, she should have just been outright honest and just been like, there's no women imams in Islam. And that's because, Allah gave us the deen and Allah told us that these are the rules and that's it.
Yeah.
And if they were to further question that, and you can just go into, how you can prove, this is how I know it's the truth. This is why I know these rules are correct and accurate. Because we as Muslims can prove Allah exists 100%. And we can prove that the Quran is the speech of Allah. She should have just been straightforward like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mahmoud Hijab, he responded to that video. But the thing is, he had a video from way back, right? Which was a question about feminism. And the way he answered that feminism question, it should have been the same way he answered the question about how that woman was dealt with, the sister was dealt with regarding the holy mother. He said that, end of the day, we are not defined by who's better by male or female. We're defined by who is a Muslim. And our hierarchy system as a Muslim, it doesn't work towards about you're a man, you're a woman and stuff like that. Well, it does work, so it doesn't work about towards who's superior. It works in terms of where do we fall in line with what Allah says. So even within a mother would have a higher hierarchy system in a point of view between a son and a mother. With it, when the son becomes of an age who can lead a prayer, who'd lead that prayer? Would it be the mother or the son? It would be the son. But again, it goes back to the whole point of what does Allah command us to do? And he even says that I can prove to you that Islam is the truth. I can prove to you Allah exists. And that's how we answer the question. Like he asked the question, we respect the women, but in terms of Islam, we follow what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us to do. And the way he answered that feminism question was the best way. Like, he was obviously it's more structured than how I said 100%, but how he answered it, like in that feminism question, he should have done the same thing with that the sister one as well. And I think because they both work together, because she's still that woman's trying to basically talk about feminism to what's the woman's role in Islam basically. But it's just crazy how that these they're openly attacking, like they don't care anymore. They're openly attacking Islam.
That's true. I mean, like the question of do we really put Islam above the dunya? It reminds me of a quote. Actually, I got two quotes. One quote is from the Quran. Allah says, the competition in worldly affairs increases, diverts you until you visit the graveyards, but no, you will soon come to know. And there's a quote that I got from Umar bin al-Khattab as well. Beware of grazing on the dunya. The cow grazes on the green grass, enjoying it until it gets fat, not realizing that its fatness will bring about its slaughter. I think that's a really good quote. But I think it's the fact that it puts it really into perspective in terms of where our focus should be in terms of Islam, and how it's not really that quote that you hear, Deen over Dunya. I don't totally agree with that, because it creates a separation between the two. Like, in Buddhism, and all these they have monks and stuff like that, and they specialize in the spiritual side of their religion, right? And they separate the Deen and Dunya. In Islam, we Muslims, we don't separate the Deen and Dunya. Islam came to deal with the Dunya. The Deen came to deal with the Dunya. It's not Islam is you have to choose between the two. You don't have to choose between the two. Like Allah encourages us to go out in the morning to gain our risk and to bring it and to earn our money, to build our houses, to build our families and things like that. We don't have to choose between the two. The Deen came to deal with the Dunya.
Yeah, I heard a quote as well. I can't remember who the quote was from, but I heard it the other day. They said, money can buy a house, but not a home. Money can buy a bed, but not sleep. Money can buy a clock, but not time. Money can buy a book, but not knowledge. Money can buy food, but not an appetite. Money can buy you friends, but not love. And this kind of just puts into perspective of why not to chase materialistic things. And it's why we should kind of strive to have the best character and conduct ourselves well, and be humble prior to being wealthy. And if we do become wealthy, and even after we, are less wealthy. And in this way, we won't become depressed if something goes wrong. And I feel like the problem a lot of the time with nowadays society is that people try and live a life while comparing to people higher than them, rather than looking and comparing to those lower than them.
Yeah, like Instagram and things like that. People, when you follow celebrities on Instagram, or like people like YouTubers, for example, people that do a lot of like social media posts, people look up to them and they think, oh, look, he's got such a nice car, he's got such a good life, this, that. So they aspire to those goals. They try to get somewhere near to what they see on these social media sites. And I think that's what sort of no one looks at. Okay, maybe some people do, but no one looks at like Mufti Menk, for example, and thinks, oh, I want to be exactly like that. A lot more Muslims think, I want to be like, I don't know, for example, Amir Khan, or I want to be like, I don't know, these other influencers, DJ Khaled. Like, they're Muslim people, but what are they doing really? Like, He's living a very luxurious life, but that's what people want at the end of the day.
And I think a lot of people's like mental health deteriorates because they can't reach those kind of heights. Like if they do want to become something like that, if anything goes wrong, they just, their mental state goes down.
Those quotes from the Quran about Islam being the main priority in your life, having that goal, and I mentioned slightly about Amar bil Ma'ruf wa Nahy anil Munkar, enjoining good, forbidding evil. I mean, if you look at it from fair enough, a micro level, but a macro level as well. We mentioned it slightly before about being involved in understanding what's happening with the world right now, with the Muslims, politically, and unifying the Muslims. That kind of work of the Muslims previously, the Sahaba, the Prophet ﷺ, to enjoin good, forbid evil, to establish that unity that they did that provide for them like a purpose in life to work towards something? Because right now, the Muslims are in quite a bit of disarray, aren't they? And they're not really, and that's partly because they have a very, and going back to the point that we've mentioned that I feel is a very big theme within this discussion, the secularization of the religion, i.e., we would just talk, read your Quran, pray your namaz, and that was about it. But if we involved ourselves in enjoining good, forbidding evil, and understanding that's a major obligation, then do you think that what you just talked about, the mental state of people would be in such a bad state because they've now got a purpose in life that to accomplish something, to work towards something?
Definitely. I mean, if you look towards any person, any individual, when they forget Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will put tests and lots of calamities before you, so you go back to Him. Whenever you feel bad at the lowest, right? When a person is forgotten Allah and is feeling at the worst, you go towards Allah, you put your head down to sajda, and you always remember Allah, right? And I think it's so important as a Muslim, if you live your life, obviously everyone wants to obtain money, they want the lavish life, right? But if you put yourself in a position, right, what is my purpose in this life? What is my purpose on this dunya? I'm a servant of Allah and I'm here to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Everything is simple. Allah's made everything. Islam is simple for us, right? We just have to follow it, right? Providing food for our families, we need to make that money, we need to go towards that money. Allah's promised the rizq, right? There is a halal way to make that money. Allah's promised us that money. We will get to that money, right? But there's also a halal way to do it, or there's a haram way. You always take the halal way because Allah's made it, ordained us to go towards that direction. We go towards that direction. We basically need to, in essence, we need to make sure that as a Muslim we follow what Allah has told us, has commanded us, right? But if you look at it like this in a perspective as a huge atmosphere, right? When you're around your friends who are in Ramadan time, you feel a lot of your taqwa, your closeness to Allah is at the highest because you've got that environment of Islam constantly around you, yeah? When you're outside Ramadan and you're around your boys, in a scenario where your boys aren't that religious, that taqwa, that closeness to Allah is not always there. If you live a society which is just purely Islam and it's not affected by a foreign ideology like capitalism, and it's purely Islam, that atmosphere of taqwa, that closeness of Allah we have with in Ramadan will always be around you. And to have that mindset of depression, why is that there for? Because when we feel at the lowest, we've got nothing to hold on to. We forget what our purpose is in life is. That mental state will disappear automatically because we're constantly around an atmosphere of taqwa, of closeness to Allah, of Muslims constantly pushing us, because we are the best nations. We are the nation who are shackle our brothers and sisters and drag each other to heaven. That's what we are. We are the best of the nations. And if we constantly have this atmosphere, this notion of depression or mental state or bad mental state wouldn't be there. And this notion of committing sins, of course we're human, we will commit sins, but it will be less sins because we're constantly around that atmosphere. And without this, what is this? What is this society? What is this atmosphere? What is this ideology? It's Islam. And how do we get there? It's by going back to how our Prophet ﷺ did, how the people after the Prophet ﷺ, the Sahabas did it, after the Sahabas, all the way to 1924, how the ultimate state is the state itself, because it's not here anymore. We're in this turmoil, we're ummah, the people, you, ourselves, everyone is in this situation where we're always juggling in our minds, how do I go this, how do I go about that? And without us going back to that life, back to that position as a ummah, we will always be under pressure and always under turmoil, and it will never change until we go back to that position.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree. I mean, that back in the Prophet's time, the Ummah were united, right? Now the Ummah is so disunited. I feel like the environment that you're talking about, that sense of community, that would help the Muslims so much. It's not there now. The Muslims are so disunited. In a way, the Muslims we're our own downfall, because us being so disunited, that's what gives us. That's what gives the non-Muslims the confidence to directly attack Islam, like how you were talking about before. Like, if someone directly attacks Islam, we should stand united together. We shouldn't, disunite even more. We shouldn't say, oh, you're from here, I'm from here, we're not the same. We don't mix with these lot, we don't mix with them lot. We should stand united. And I feel like a lot of problems stem from the fact that we're disunited now, and that we have no actual community that stand together and make the Muslims strong as a unit.
Definitely.
That reminds me of an ayah in the Quran, Innama al-mu'minuna ikhwa, meaning verily you are but a single brotherhood. And I think that's a good ayah to end it on. Join us next time for a roundtable discussion. And thanks for everybody who participated. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.